All right. Okay. I gotta go. It's on. Bye. Hey there. Yes, I'm so sorry. My sister's on the phone. And it's hard to get our sisters off the phone, isn't it? Let me check this over here right quick. I haven't got anything ready. I bet it's just really yeah, that's exactly what I thought. All right, fix that real quick, and there we go. All right. Now, good to see you guys. Yes, my hair's a wreck. I'm a wreck today. Anyway, fix this. All right, that's good. And we're ready to go. All right, so today we're going to go back and read our book. We need to catch up on that. We only have 5 chapters left. So anyway, we are ready to go. And let me get over here. Anyway, hello. Let me get my, I don't have this on. I don't think you can hear me. All right, now we're ready. Okay, how's everybody doing? Hope you had a good evening. I hope my internet does not start doing that mess again today from yesterday. Something is going on with it. It's like the signal gets kind of weak, and then it just kind of goes out, right? And we don't have any internet, and then I lose my little live stream and all that mess. But anyway, all right, here we go. Good. All right, let me get this over here turned on. Make sure my music is not too loud. Anyway, okay, here we go. All right, now, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to read chapter 20, 21, and 22 today. We have 5 chapters left. It only has 25 chapters. And then I also want to talk about something else, but I've got to get some statistics together and all that stuff. Because I want to talk about, I don't know if you've ever paid attention to this or not, but it is important. Children that are homeschooled. Now, there's a lot of successful homeschooling. There is. And there's wonderful programs for homeschooling. But one of the things that happens with homeschooling is they are not tracked, right? So you've got parents who say, oh, I'm going to take my child out and homeschool them, or I'm going to homeschool my child. But there's no checks and balance system. There's nobody from a school district coming over there and saying, hey, are you on level? Are you where you're supposed to be? Are you ready to take the high school course? I mean, I've never homeschooled a child because, number one, I'm not a teacher, and I knew I could not successfully do that. Hey, Elizabeth, how are you doing today? So good to see you. Welcome. So that's why I've never tried it, and I'll tell you another reason. My child is so much smarter than myself and my husband. I am willing to admit the truth. I know he is. That's the way it is. We know that. It's okay. We've known that forever. Well, since he was little, actually. But anyway, I'm watching these things go by, and another thing that happens is you notice that these children, there's a lot of children that go missing, or their parents unalive them, things like that. One of the things you go back and look at is they were homeschooled, so nobody was actually checking on these kids. There was nobody from the system. If CPS was not involved, then nobody knew anything about these kids. They just disappear. They just fall into the cracks of the world. And then, they're just lost. So I am very concerned when I hear people talk about homeschooling, because they need to come up with a system. And I guess I need to get somebody to come live and help talk about homeschooling, their experiences with homeschooling, to see if there is some kind of, because the way I understand homeschooling is you decide what program you're going to do. And it's really not through the school district. It's through something else. It's not your school district that you live in. It's like a private company that provides the materials for you. It's not. That's why it's not really tracked. That's why nobody really knows. That's why these kids fall through the system. But anyway, I just want to talk about that. I'm going to do a real show about that at some point. But I thought about it today when I was reading something and I saw some information. I was like, oh no, because you just don't want this to happen. You don't want these kids to be lost. You don't want these kids to miss very important parts of learning. Very, in different ages, in different stages, in different ages, children learn certain things. And if you miss that, it's hard to go backwards and then learn it when you should have learned it, right? You kind of it's really hard to do that. I just hate to see it happen. And then you've got people who homeschool their children who are not even educated enough themselves to go and take an SAT test, right? Or any type of those kind of things. You see this happening all the time, and you wonder to yourself, how are those children getting into college, right? How are they going to make a future for themselves? Anyway, that's enough about that, because I don't have the information in front of me. I just thought about it for a second today, and I was talking with Lady Freedom for a moment, and we were talking about this because it's a real situation that's happening out there. I know, anyway. Okay, so let's read our book. Hey there, Elizabeth. I'm so glad to see you. I really like Elizabeth to come in and listen. I do. All right, so the name of this chapter is called Smoke and Mirrors. So feel free, let me turn around this way so I can actually get some light up here. Y'all know I have bad eyes. I'm not going to get, here's the other thing that's going on. I'm so irritated about this. I'm just going to tell you, I'm very irritated. So I was in this eye study, right? I need to get my little cataract fixed, but I could not do that while I was in the eye study. Okay, well, the last day of the eye study was September the 15th. So I called, make this appointment. I can't even get in to see the doctor to get on the schedule to get the cataract surgery until November the 3rd. I wanted to do this in October because my husband's already scheduled a week off for something else we were going to do. But then we changed our mind. I thought, well, I'll just use that week to get my eye fixed. Well, now I have to wait on my eye too. It's so irritating. Because I can't even drive at night. At this rate, I can't even drive at night. It's like this weird, I don't know how to explain it. This weird, I can't judge distance. At night, I just can't judge the distance of another car. But anyway, we'll get to it. I was just so irritated about that yesterday. Let me get to reading. Let's have some fun. Let's do a little reading. So, Smoke and Mirrors. It was safe to say things weren't going well. My personal life was a wreck. David and I were hardly talking. My extracurricular activities were highly questionable, and I was seriously starting to wonder whether I should commit myself to a mental institution. It had been a week since I had seen Dr. Carlin. Between work, school, and my frequent escapes to Jenny's backyard, I hardly had time to eat, much less drive back and forth to the other side of town for therapy. This was irrelevant, though, because as my psychopathic behavior reared its head, my choice to remain distant from her was less about logistics and more about self-preservation. Remember, she had made promises to the doctor. Remember that? Mm-hmm. As most of my free time was playing out like a test on the Tarzoff rule, it just meant that the therapist was no longer an acceptable confidant. Okay, so she knew if she said something to her, she's going to be very upset with her. The buttons made sharp clicks as my fingers flew over the keyboard. It was the morning after the visit to Jenny's house, and instead of working, I was at my desk just Googling modern asylums. She just makes me laugh, I'm telling you. My actions from the previous night just had felt like it just left me rattled. What had started out as a harmless stretch of sociopathic muscle had transformed into something I wasn't sure I could control. I was unsettled by how quickly my attentions had shifted from disciplined deviance to near ferocity. In the light of day, it became clear I needed serious professional help, and I was willing to just do about anything to get it. Anorexia, I read, bipolar, depression. My eyes just scanned the list of disorders treated by prestigious Northern California Wellness Center. Okay. I frowned at the options, and as I scrolled through the list, schizoaffective disorder, schizophrenia, social anxiety disorder, Tourette syndrome. Okay, trigger warning, she says bad words, and I just read it exactly how it is. Fuck, I muttered. I was disappointed by the absence of sociopathic among the options, just like the dictionaries. I scratched another name off the spreadsheet that I had printed. It was number 33 on my list. In several hours since I'd started my search for professional intervention, hadn't produced a single visible option. None of the psychiatric services listed on the mental institution websites offered any treatment related to sociopathy. None of the people at the various places I'd called could even point me in the right direction. Sociopathy was clinically obsolete. It basically is, because remember they call it something else now. And one woman had explained, schizophrenia, she unhelpfully suggested, was remarkably popular. Like the lady said, why don't you say you have schizophrenia and come in under that diagnosis? Oh, Lord. Are you hearing voices, the woman had asked? And I said no, before I had the time to properly consider it. Absence of delusions and other signs of irrational thinking was number 2 on Cleckley's list. Now, collectively, let's remember is that list of sociopathic traits that they use whenever they determine somebody is a sociopath. So anyway, sociopaths, the psychologists have theorized, don't suffer from signs of psychosis the way that schizophrenics do. As a result, they're capable of logical reasoning and are believed to have control over much of their antisocial behavior. In other words, sociopaths are tempted to do violent things because they think they want to, not because they hear voices to compel them. Patrick, she goes, Patrick, my assistant's voice crackled over the intercom. Your dad wants to see you. I took a deep breath and just rose from my desk. Maybe I should pretend to be schizophrenic, I thought, as I walked down the hall. After all, I was hearing voices. It was my own. And there was the encouraging me to do terrible things to Jenny Crucy. Now, Jenny Crucy is the lady that's blackmailing her, remember? She told her, if you don't give me $50,000, I'm going to hurt your little sister. And she's very protective of her little sister. Hey, Dad said. When I shuffled into his office, I need you to check the Hudson demo. The Hudson demo was a collection of songs by a pop group we represented. Dad had been waiting for weeks for it to be completed. It was in the final stages of production at a recording studio in Hollywood. I didn't acknowledge him because I was still thinking about what I'd have to pull off a convincing schizophrenic impression. Patrick, Dad said, are you listening to me? Yeah, I answered. Sorry, I'm just confused. And are you sure it's done? No, he snapped, but I need it to get done. I'm meeting with 3 labels next week. So if I have to send you to the studio every trigger warning goddamn day to nag them about it, then that's what I'm going to do. I was quick to drive to the studio, and I waved at the receptionist in the lobby and strolled down the long main hallway in search of the Hudson's team. I gotta turn the light on. It's getting dark. I think we're gonna get rain. Hang on, let me get the light. Hang on. Yeah, I gotta stand up. Yeah, it's getting dark outside. Wow. I mean, we need rain. Don't get me wrong. We need rain. Okay. All right. Yeah, she does say some bad words. So let me read. Okay, so she talks about she's looking in each one of this long hall, just looking at each one of the rooms, looking for the team. I've been fond of the recording studio ever since I was a child, and Dad would take me with him to work. This resembled caves to me. It was always dark, always cold, always filled with music. You never knew what you might find. After a few minutes of searching for them, I spotted a producer I recognized. He was leaning against an open studio door. He was facing me as he stood casually inside the frame, talking to someone I couldn't see. Hey, Patrick, he said. As I approached, what's up? Hey, Neil, I replied with a smile. You haven't seen Bill around, have you? I asked, referring to the head producer. I'm trying to track down a demo. Just then, another man peeked out from inside the studio. An acoustic guitar hung on a thick strap around his shoulder, and I recognized him at once, even though he was taller than I thought he'd be. Hi, he said. Oh, I'm sorry, Neil said. Do you guys know each other? The guy shook his head. He stepped self-assuredly into the hallway, extending his hand, and I just laughed. I'd never quite gotten used to being introduced to someone whose identity was so obvious. Despite growing up around the entertainment business and spending much of my adult life working in close proximity to all sorts of successful artists, the ritual of the introduction, as if the name of the person standing in front of me wasn't laughably plain, had always struck me as funny. I decided to say exactly that to the man with the guitar. I never thought about it, he said, grinning. So, here out of the way. He goes, how about this, he offered, his eyes just sparkling mischievously. Pretend it's not me. He extended his other hand and said, hey, the name's Max Magus. Nice, I said, playing along, like a Batman villain with a hint of porn. He's kind of funny. And then she goes, your turn, he said. Well, she goes, I'm Patrick, I said. He nodded in approval. So tell me, Patrick, do you know any good places to eat around here? I nodded yes. Well, what do you say about lunch? I shook my head, simultaneously impressed and put off by his confidence. Thanks for the invitation, I said, smiling, but my boyfriend frowns on me going out on lunch dates with strange men. Oh, great boyfriend placement, he replied, not missing a beat. You see what she did there? He asked. She let me know she's taking, and so smoothly. But the joke's on you, he said, for I too have a significant other. How nice for her, I said, just laughing. So how about it, he asked. Now that you know I'm not hitting on you, it's perfectly innocent. Besides, I'm starving, and Neil refuses to come with me. Well, I'm in the middle of just mixing your albums, grumbled Neil, and Max waved his hand dismissively. Well, I can't, I said. I'm working too. I'm only here to find a demo. Mike, Max shouted suddenly. Another man just appeared in the doorway. What's up, boss? He goes, I need you to track down a demo. Max looked at me expectantly. I sighed, feigning aspirations. It's just the band. He goes, it's the band Hudson. I said, smiling apologetically at Mike. Bill Gross is the producer. Mike picked up the phone. 1 second, I'll call the engineer. Looks like you're out of excuses. Okay, so the demo must not be ready. They might not have found it. I really have to go back to work, I said. Me too, he pressed. But if you feel like waiting around for me to just drop off the demo, I gave in. There's a place near my office, and it's called the Smokehouse. When I get to the Smokehouse, Max was already there. He was waiting for me in a crescent-shaped booth. Took you long enough, he said. I almost decided not to go. Having lunch with someone I just met was atypical for me, and having lunch with anyone, really. But after a morning of asylum seeking, a spontaneous lunch with a prominent stranger just sounded like a decent way to spend the afternoon. It sure beat any distractions measures that I've been using lately. Remember, she always does this thing where she calls it her prescription, because when she starts getting this stuck stress, she has to find a way to relieve it. And she usually does something that people like us probably would not do. Like, I'm not going to go into a stranger's yard and spy on him, right? I'm not going to do that. Wow. Okay, I mean, she's just too funny. Well, and the Smokehouse provided the perfect backdrop. Its dark wood interior and high back booth always made me feel like I was just concerned from the world and my problems, if only temporarily. As soon as I sat down, Max asked, how do you find this place? She goes, it's one of the oldest restaurants in the city, I told him. It's also one of my favorites, one of my favorites tied with a jar. Okay, that's weird. And James Beach, the jar is a restaurant there. Okay, so she's going, and the jar, and James Beach, El Coyote, Giorgio Baldi, I could just go on. You sound like a foodie, he said. So tell me, if you could go to any restaurant in the world right now, which would it be? Per se, I replied without hesitation, in New York. I've never been, but it's number one on my culinary bucket list. Then you've got good taste, Max. He just humble bragged. I smiled and leaned back against the warm leather booth, taking stock at my lunch date. He was fun. I already felt like I was having a conversation with an old friend, someone effortlessly engaging and uninterested in mindless chit-chat. After the waiter brought us our drinks, Mac asked, do you ever feel like you're crazy? And this was a question he should not have asked her. No. I was briefly thrown by that question, and I got the feeling that was the point, as if he was trying to get me off balance. It was a tactic I used with people, too. I smiled pleasantly surprised and said, yes, actually. Remember, she's been looking for an asylum. Oh, he lowered his voice and leaned slightly forward. No, but I mean like really crazy. Like right now, I feel totally sane, but then I'll think back on something I did or say and a few months ago that was totally like fucking insane. Only at the time I did it, it seemed like a completely logical decision. You're worried you have a false sense of self-awareness, I offered. Now remember, she's also in school right now too. She's back at I think UCLA. Well, yes, he helped me. It helped. He impressed. He goes, yes, he replied, impressed that I understood so quickly. Like you can't trust yourself to know at any given time what is and isn't sane behavior. Christ, he said, running a hand through his thick dark hair. Yes, I do feel like that, I told him. In fact, I spent most of the morning searching for a mental asylum so I could have myself committed. I relished the words as they left my mouth. It was nice to simply speak the truth. Max's reaction, good or bad, meant nothing. With nothing to lose, I decided to just be myself. I didn't know how long the freedom would last, but I intended to enjoy it. Boy, she just says that whatever she thinks, doesn't she? Max was looking at me as if he couldn't decide whether to take me seriously. I found the list of wellness centers in my purse and placed it on the table. I am a sociopath, I disclosed. I was diagnosed a few years ago, and I've been trying to get treatment ever since. He took a deep breath and he leaned back in his seat. What does that mean exactly? He listened as I outlined my struggles with sociopathy and frustration that there was more clinical information. There wasn't more clinical information or any treatment options. I was seeing a therapist for a while, and she was great. She wasn't a specialist, though, and that's what I think I need. And then I paused and confessed, because I've been having some problems lately. Problems like what? Max asked. Fully absorbed. Impulse control, for one. There's a woman who's been trying to extort me for many months. I explained, and last night things escalated. He goes, escalated how? Oh boy, here she goes. I shrugged. I almost jumped in her backyard. What? He did a spit take and grabbed a napkin. The good news, I went on, is that when I woke up that morning, I knew I needed to take some preventative measures, but I haven't had any luck in finding someone who can help me. I just frowned. Sociopathy isn't considered a treatable disorder. I'm actually working on my doctorate in psychology, just so I can learn more about it. Wait, Max said, just wiping his chin. I thought you were a manager. I am. I do both. Quite the double life, he said with admiration. So, who is this person? What person? The extorter. Oh, I said, it's Oliver Krusty's mom. Krusty's mom. Now, see, here's something funny that's fixing to happen here. He craned his neck at me. His eyes were bulging. Oliver Krusty, he repeated. The singer? Yeah. My manager just pitched me on working with him, he said. She goes, well, unless you're cool with losing most of your valuables, I wouldn't invite his mom into the writing sessions. And then she took a sip. Though I'm not the one to pass judgment. Wait, he said, shaking his head. Go back. Why is Oliver's mom blackmailing you? Because she is blackmailing her, right? I rubbed my eyes. She says she has compromising pictures of my dad, and if I don't leave $50,000 in cash at the Holiday Inn on Highland, she's going to go to the press with them and cut my face open, or maybe cut my face open and then go to the press. I can't remember. My worst, it's too funny. My words hung briefly in the air, and then we both started laughing, struck by the absurdity of the situation, which, for the first time, had become hilarious to me. Okay, hold on, he said, catching his breath. Your dad's a manager too, right? And she nodded. Max dropped his voice conspicuously. So you think she really has pictures? Probably, I said. Then he sighed with relief. Again, it was refreshing to be honest, as if a 1,000-pound weight had been removed from my shoulders. Although I'm not sure it matters. That's part of my problem. I can never tell when something bad is bad. Yeah, but you must have known what she was doing was bad, Max observed. Otherwise, you wouldn't have wanted to punish her. That's the thing, I replied. I don't think it was about punishment at all. And then I recounted my multiple trips to Jenny's backyard and the sense of the release that I experienced afterward. I wasn't going over there because of what she did, I admitted. I did it because the opportunity presented itself. I fell silent as an ancient memory drifted across my consciousness. Just like Kiki, I murmured. Max cocked an eyebrow. Kiki was my mother's cat, a house cat from birth. She spent her entire life indoors until the day I let her out. It was a true accident. I told him. I opened the door and she just bolted. She'd been hiding behind the couch, I guess, just waiting for the chance. And the second she got it, she was gone. After about an hour, though, she came back. I found her on the porch just lounging in the sun. I rested my head against the booth as I continued my stroll down memory lane. Mom never knew, but every afternoon after that, I would just sit outside after school and leave the front door open so Kiki could come out. Sometimes she'd lie next to me. Sometimes she'd just roam around the yard, but she never ran away again. She knew what was good for her, Max replied. I smiled. It's true. Kiki didn't want to be an outdoor cat. She just needed to make the choice for herself. And I thought about that. Don't misunderstand. My mom's protective instincts were right, but her strategy was wrong. My mom wanted to keep Kiki contained. That's when it clicked. Like David, I said. Max just blinked in confusion. And remember, David is her man. My boyfriend, I clarified, he doesn't like that. He doesn't like that I am a sociopath. And I said bluntly, he doesn't like that I don't feel things the way he does. You know, the way everybody else does. He used to, I think, but now it scares him. I think he's afraid and that if I get out of the house, I'll never come back. Metaphorically speaking. Max he tilted his head in puzzlement and delight just spread across his face. Are you for real? He asked. Are you a real person, or am I just having the best fucking dream of my life? I chuckled at his bravado. I could tell he was just flirting, but I wasn't bothered. I sort of liked it. It was nice to be accepted for who I was. Just, rewarded even. And anyway, it was harmless. I smiled. I might have to get back to you on that. How long have you been together, Max asked. A few years. That's a long time, he said. I know. I said, but that's why I jumped at the chance to go to Jenny's. I think some part of me was like, it's only a matter of time before David and I stop fighting and I decide to go be good again. Well, maybe for a while I can anyway. Hey, let me check something to make sure you're not getting this horrible, there, no, you're not. Okay, we're good. So, but is that what you want? He asked provocatively. To be good? I sighed and just looked up at the ceiling. What I want is to be better, I said, my voice betraying a hint of exhaustion. Different. He looked shocked. Why? Because I'm not well, I laughed. Did you hear what I said? I almost assaulted someone last night. But you didn't, he countered. I don't know. I think it's interesting, and at the fact that you're so open about it. He shook his head and took a long sip of his drink. I wouldn't change a fucking thing. I shifted slightly in my seat, and it was another bold statement. One that just resonated more than I was ready to admit. I forced an inquisitive expression, just eager to change the topic. I bet she was eager to change the topic then, because it's a little too close to home at that point, right? This guy's over here enjoying her, telling these stories about what she's doing and how, it's basically dangerous. You show up in somebody's backyard these days, they might just take a gun out because you're in their space. So what about you, I asked. What's your vice? Well, flattery probably, he answered after a beat. Attention, validation, he shrugged. Not very original, I'll admit. That's the thing. That's the thing about it in this business, though, he said. The addiction feeds the addictions. It must be such a crazy existence. Well, what do you mean? Everyone's attracted to fame, I said. It's all very alluring, but at the same time, it's terrifying. I shuddered thinking about the lack of invisibility. I'd kill myself if everywhere I went, people knew who I was. Instead of killing other people, you mean, he just quipped. I laughed. On that note, he replied, signaling for the waiter, I say we get another round. I considered rejecting, but then I thought, this is going to run, hang on, guys. She goes, but then I thought, then I thought, why not? It wasn't like I had anything better to do. Uh-oh, she going to get drunk in the afternoon with a strange man. This is not good. Oh, no. The waiter approached our table. Martini for me and whiskey for him. Max waited for him to leave. And then he said, it's my problem with everything, actually. Sometimes I'm just comfortable with success. Sometimes I hate it. Sometimes I wanted the girl. Sometimes I want her to disappear. That's totally normal, I told him. You got that right. It's a boundary issue. Well, what do you mean? People who don't have access to conventional boundaries are always looking for new ways to set them, just like me. Okay, Max looked down at his nose at me. So you're saying I'm a latent sociopath? No, she only makes me laugh. No, you need too much validation. Then I had an idea. No, I bet I could conduct a study on sociopathy and the negative effects it has on fame. I leaned back deep in thought. Sociopaths don't recognize natural boundaries. And then I said, mostly to myself, and they aren't easily socialized as children. Remember when she was a child, she had a lot of problems. She had a lot of problems getting along with people. She always knew she was different. I redirected my attention to Max. But that's the same thing that happens to famous people, isn't it? The more they achieve, the fewer boundaries they have. They don't play by the rules, so they start acting destructively to find a new normal, to find new boundaries. They start acting like sociopaths. I realized I was rambling. I'm sort of a psychology nerd. I said with a shrug, sorry, I thought you didn't feel remorse, he joked. I said, it doesn't come naturally, but I can fake it pretty good. I flashed a wide grin. I'm starting to pick up on that, but you still haven't answered my question. He rested his elbow on the table and dropped his cheek against his palm. I asked you if you were real. You'd said you'd get back to me. Oh, I just chuckled. How about you decide? He stared at me intently. I say you real. Great. So how long would you she goes, so how long would you say she goes, how long would we have? I shot him a playful she goes, I shot him a playfully disapproving glance. His questions intentionally vague, but bold, still harmless. Now that we know you're real, he said, how long you think before you check yourself into the asylum? Oh my goodness. I sighed and looked at the ceiling again. Who knows? I have to find one that will take me first. Well, do you think you'll be around tomorrow night? He asked. Most likely. Why? Some friends of mine are playing the Hollywood Bowl. You can be my guest, Max grinned, along with your boyfriend, of course. Oh, now he's inviting the boyfriend too. See, I think he's really flirting with her. I do. Later that night, I sat in the living room just waiting for David to get home. I'd poured 2 glasses of wine as I relaxed on the window bench overlooking the street. I couldn't help but bask in the contentment brought on by my lunch with Max. I started out the day despondent, resigned to the idea of committing myself to a mental institution, but now, incredibly, I felt clear. I hadn't been looking for one, but Max had turned out to be an exceptional acceptance surrogate. Hanging out with him had been fun, unexpected for the first time in months. I finally had the chance to just be myself, the way I liked myself, and I was hoping to keep that momentum going with David. The air was so cool, and I had the French doors open in the backyard. A burning log in the fireplace just crackled, jazz floated from the speakers, and I thought I might explode in relief. 24 hours earlier, I'd stood beneath a canopy of tree branches, inches away from making a huge mistake. But now, I couldn't imagine doing anything of that sort. The desire to go to Jenny's house, to do anything destructive, in fact, was just distant to me as Louisiana Baptist hymn. What? That makes no sense. Listen to what she says here. The desire to go back to Jenny's house, to do anything destructive, in fact, was as distant to me as the Louisiana Baptist hymn, like something vaguely remembered from my youth. I leaned my head against the picture window. A soft glow illuminated from the canyon road below. I saw a glint of David's headlights and scrambled out of my seat. I closed the shutters, rushed to turn off the stereo, and picked up the glass of wine as I hurried to the front door. I'd planned to meet him in the driveway. I'd wanted to hand him a glass of wine with the second he stepped out of the car, to give him a warm welcome home. But in my haste, I'd forgotten to sit down my own glass. Now, with both hands full, I didn't have any way to open the door. I bent at the waist in an attempt to twist the doorknob with my shoulder, but I couldn't get it open before David's silhouette appeared in the frosted window of that door panel. Patrick, he asked, though, oh, what in the hell are you doing? I just giggled, straightened up, and pushed the door open. Well, I was going to meet you outside, I explained, except I didn't have any hands. He laughed as I closed the door. Well, this is nice, he said. He happily accepted the wine. Why are you still up? It's almost midnight. Well, I wrapped my arm around his neck and pulled him into a long kiss. I know, I said. I figured you might be hungry. Well, that's sweet of her, isn't it? She waited up to give him dinner at midnight. She goes, I'm starving, he said. Oh, my God. I don't have one in here. He goes, I'm starving, he said. There's chicken pot pie in the oven. He smiled. That's not what I meant. Hours later, the two of us lay in bed. He patiently listened as I rattled off the details of my afternoon. He nodded as I told him about the trip to the studio and my serendipitous introduction to the curious musician. So, like the two of you are friends now? I wouldn't go that far. I said just laughingly, but he did invite us to a show at the bowl. I shook my head. Isn't that awesome? Well, I don't love you getting randomly drunk with me. He goes, but I don't, oh my Lord, she just makes me laugh. Well, I don't love you getting randomly drunk with a guy in the middle of the afternoon. Oh, live a little, I nudged him. Besides, it wasn't like that. He says. So what was it like? I tried to find a way to explain it. Well, today, hanging out with a stranger, I could just be myself. It didn't matter who he was. He could have just been talking to a robot for all I cared. It was just nice to talk to someone about my diagnosis and say the word sociopath without it being a bad thing. Now you would think I kind of don't understand her. I might have to get a tissue. I'm not sure. I don't understand her just telling everybody about this. Everybody, just some random stranger, she's telling them that she's a sociopath. I think that's kind of uncomfortable. I don't think I'd be able to do that, you know? I don't think I could. You told him that, David asked? He was just astonished. Why? Because it's who I am, honey. It's my life, I told him. And it was fun. That's why I was in such a good mood all day. It was just liberating to feel accepted. I accept you, David replied quietly. Not always, I replied in kind. He just cocked an eyebrow. What an exciting life he must have, he mused, changing the subject. Okay, so David didn't really want to talk about that. I looked at him in horror. Are you kidding? All he does is write, record, tour, write, record, and tour. Where's the normalcy? Where's the life? I shook my head. Do you think any of those people, the artists I mean, go to have normal relationships or normal lives? Just think of how the transient their existence must be. It's like the second someone decides to be an artist, as successful or not, they stop evolving with the rest of the society. They're just trapped in a state of suspended impertinence. Yeah. David smiled. Let me adjust these glasses for just a minute. Oh my God. Well, I can't wait to get this eye fixed. David smiled. I guess I never thought of it that way, but I do adore how you just thoroughly analyze everyone you meet. Because it's fascinating to me. That's what I love about school. I never knew any of this stuff before. All this people stuff. The only thing I ever researched before was sociopathy. But now I'm learning about all the different personality types, all the different ways people cope with their psychological shortcomings. It's like I can't get enough. I locked eyes with him. People are fucking amazing, you know. He offered a faint grin and pushed a lock of hair across my forehead. He goes, I'm proud of you, he said. The work you do on yourself, getting your PhD, it's just amazing. He paused. I think you're amazing. I smiled and pushed back against the faint tug of responsibility. I was quite aware that I hadn't truly been keeping my end of our bargain. Oh boy, she has not. I hadn't told him about Jenny or my visits to her condo or that I'd spent the morning looking for a mental institution. But I also knew it wasn't safe. Not yet, anyway. And certainly not that moment, while everything's so relaxed and wonderful. So what about tomorrow, I asked eagerly. Can you come home first and we'll go together? Or you just want to meet up at the bowl? He made just a pained face. Oh, honey, he said, I can't go tomorrow night. It's the company dinner, remember? Damn it, I muttered. I forgot. I leaned back against him and sighed. Never mind then, I said. I'll just meet you at the restaurant. I could feel him shaking his head. Honey, no, he said. It's a fucking work party with most boring people on earth. Escape while you can. I settled against his chest. My body was surrendering to exhaustion. Well, when you put it that way, I replied. Just be good, he said. Uh-oh, he said. She's going to go over to the bowl by herself. With this strange man, right? Chapter 21 is called Exposition. And I bet she puts on a show. Oh, boy. A month later, I sat in Max's dining room with a bunch of his friends, just having dinner. In the short time since our chance encounter at the studio, our friendship had grown by leaps and bounds, and I liked it. I enjoyed having another friend who liked me for me. The acceptance made me feel stable. It was just a welcome relief. Despite the break in the clouds a few weeks before, things with David had continued to deteriorate. I found myself inventing reasons to argue with him and then using his angry reactions just to disappear. The night I finally confessed to the trips I'd been making to Jenny's house, for instance, he practically lost his mind. She promised him she would not be doing these things, but she was doing it behind his back, right? What the fuck, Patrick, he said. You've been going over... She makes me laugh. You've been going over to her house? It was a hopeless dynamic that reminded me of my childhood. Once again, I regretted my decision to be honest. What does it matter, I snapped back. It just pissed at him for judging me. It's not like I did anything violent. I mean, barely. It's not like I lost control, sort of. Talking to David about my dark desires was just pointless. It only ever ended with him trying to suppress or negate them. Talking about them with Max, on the other hand, was just fun. I relaxed against this plush cushion and watched with amusement as Max rose from his chair. Everyone raise a glass, he told us. I'd like to propose a toast to a very special person. He winked in my direction. A complete lunatic who just happened to get her very first research grant this afternoon. Oh boy. Oh my. He just grinned when I winced at being in the spotlight. To Patrick, Max announced, may her psychological discoveries bring us all the closest to sanity. Oh boy. I smiled and rolled my eyes at him over the rim of my glass. When everyone settled back into their seats, the woman next to me, an actress named Michelle, asked, so, what is it you're researching? Sociopaths, I told her. I'm studying the relationship between sociopathy and anxiety. They go together, trust me, they do. That's not what she wrote, but I'm just saying they do. Her expressions just switched from detached curiosity to wholehearted interest. From the corner of my eye, I could see Max just grinning. He loved watching the conversations play out. Wait, he interrupted the brunette seated at his side. Aren't sociopaths like evil? They're the ones who have no feelings, like Ted Bundy and stuff, right? Not exactly, I said. They aren't really evil. They just feel differently than most people. Is that the difference between a sociopath and a psychopath? I asked him, a guy seated across from me. He too was a musician and one of Max's oldest friends. It's a tricky question, I answered, because they're grouped together along with antisocial personality disorders. I paused to think of the easiest way to summarize it. It comes down to diagnosis. People with antisocial personality disorders are assessed using criteria in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. It's like the Bible of the psychological field. But psychopaths and sociopaths can't be diagnosed that way. There's special tests just for them. What, do they get their own test? He asked. Because they measure different things, I said. Being diagnosed as antisocial doesn't automatically make you a psychopath or a sociopath, and vice versa. Then why are they all grouped together? Asked Michelle. Because they're varying types of the same disorder. It's sort of like the different shades of the same color, I explained. That's a good way to put it, isn't it? So then, she goes, then what's the difference between a sociopath and a psychopath? Tim pressed. Well, there isn't one right now, I replied, not clinically speaking anyway, but I think there should be. There's lots of research indicating that those on the extreme end of the spectrum are physically incapable of learning the social emotions like shame or remorse. I told him I consider the true psychopaths to be the ones biologically blocked from progressing through the normal stages of emotional development. It's like the wiring in their brain is just off. They never learn from consequences or punishment. Yes. But aren't sociopaths like that? Max's manager, Brian, asked me. No, I said. That's why I think they should be separate. There are a lot of people who score way higher than most on the psychopath test, but fall just below the threshold. They're physically capable of learning social emotions. They just need to be taught differently. Those, I believe, are the true sociopaths. And I think most of them probably fall somewhere on the spectrum. Max's brunette was wide-eyed. Now I don't know why you call her, she called her by her name. I don't understand writing Max's brunette. Well, Max's brunette was wide-eyed. I had an ex like that, she said, just breathlessly. He lifted her hand and kissed her affectionately. Oh, I guess that's his girlfriend. That's why he calls her that. Okay, Michelle said, but what's that have to do with anxiety? Well, that's what I want to know, I said. I told them about Klexley's psychopathy checklist and how there were traits on it that I thought were just questionable. Take number 3, absence of nervousness or she goes, number 3 on the list is absence of nervousness or psychoneurotic manifestations, I explained. That's saying sociopaths don't experience nervousness and don't get worried or stressed. And while I agree with nervousness part, I don't believe sociopaths are immune to anxiety. In fact, I think that's the thing that really sets them apart from a psychopath. Michelle shook her head and reached for her wine. So fascinating, she said. She goes, what got you interested in all this? Oh no, here she goes. He goes, wait, Max interrupted. Can I tell them? I just grinned coyly and said yes. You know what he's fixing to tell them, right? Patrick here, he declared, with a dramatic flourish, is a bona fide sociopath. He flashed a proud smile and leaned back in his chair. It's true, I admitted. I was diagnosed a few years ago. I've tried to get treatment, but there's no official treatment for sociopathy. So I figured I'd go back to school and try to find one. I paused. Instead of sitting around and just waiting for my bad behavior to get worse, Michelle's eyes widened. Oh, on that note, Max said, getting up and just heading for the kitchen. Anyone need anything? He called over his shoulder, and I felt the phone buzz. I saw I had a text message. On my way home, will you be there? Okay, so David was texting her, let her know he was on his way home. David was leaving town early the next morning for work, and I'd wanted to see him before he left. Business trips had become more frequent, just part of his job. As his company expanded, he would sometimes spend a week or more setting up a computer system in different parts of the country. I frowned when I read his note and just felt a twinge of sadness. I knew he was trying. Over the course of my life, he'd probably tried harder than anyone. Thinking about that made me just uneasy. Suddenly, I was eager to get home to be with him. I excused myself from the table, grabbed my glass, and just walked quickly to the kitchen. Hey, I said to Max, who was opening another bottle of wine. I gotta go. David's on his way home. Bummer, he just frowned. He's leaving tomorrow, right? Yeah, I said. It's a short trip, though, just a week. Max nodded and put the open bottle of wine on the counter. Any plans while he's gone? Not really. Max cocked his head. Then let's have dinner at Per Se Thursday night. He goes, it'll have to be on the late side. How's 8:30? It dawned on me that he was serious. What are you up to? I asked. I got to do a press thing, he said. The label's flying me to JFK. Okay, so this restaurant is in New York. Okay, so he just invited her to go to New York. Okay, so at the crack of dawn, come with me. We'll land around 3. I'll be done in an hour, and then we can do whatever we want and fly back after dinner. I laughed. And what am I supposed to tell David? I asked, crossing my arms. That I'm just going to pop over to New York while he's out of town? Well, why not? It's not a date. It's just two friends flying off on a whimsical adventure. Just Max insisted he won't care. I stared down my nose at him. He would absolutely care. And Max shrugged. Then don't tell him, he said with a grin. Stifling a smile, I looked away. You're a bad influence. It was true. Unlike David, who always wanted me to suppress my sociopathic traits, Max had been just pushing me to embrace them since the day we met. We shared a rapport that was just so easy and natural, if not altogether healthy. I knew it. I also knew that hanging out with Max wasn't the wise choice. He was like a recreational drug that made me just feel invincible and strong. My saving grace was that I could only take so much. Being high on Max simply wasn't something I could do all the time, nor was it what I wanted. He was too flamboyant for me, and his access to nearly unlimited resources made him a frequent magnet for chaos. I, on the other hand, preferred discipline, so I was mindful of the dosing. I gave him a friendly peck on the cheek. I'll think about it, I said. That's a terrible idea, he yelled as I walked out the door. Can you imagine somebody saying, hey, come on, let's get on the plane. We're just going to fly to New York and have dinner, and then we're going to come home. No big deal. Don't tell your spouse. No, I cannot imagine that. Thursday morning, I woke up to my phone just buzzing with texts. I squinted at the screen and saw one was from Max. A photo of his shoes kicked up against the window of a jet cabin. He texted me, loser. I smirked and just scrolled to the text message. It was from David. She did not go? Wow. If you're probably sleeping, but I just wanted you to know how much I love you. There's no one in the world who just drives me crazier than you do. But there's also no one else I'd rather be with. I love you so much, Patrice. Oh boy, waking up to that. I sighed as I closed the screen and just leaned back against the headboard. I was so glad I decided not to accept Max's invitation, though it hadn't been easy. The musician knew how to appeal to my dark side. When it came to New York's trip, I had no problem with his mental gymnastics. It wasn't wrong to take an impulsive trip with a friend. Max and I weren't going to do anything illegal or embark on some illicit affair. Dinner in Manhattan would have been just a decadent and fun. The only issue, as far as I was concerned, was David wouldn't have liked it. It wasn't fair. Why should I have to abstain from doing something fun simply because someone else felt it was wrong? Why was I constantly expected to abide by a set of emotional rules to which I couldn't relate? Why couldn't it be the other way around for once? When was someone going to relate to me? God, it would have been so easy to get on that plane. I could have just jetted off and back, and David never would have known. What's more, I wouldn't have felt bad about it. But something held me back. The morning David left, I'd become aware of some heaviness in my chest. It was barely noticeable at first, but the longer I contemplated a quick trip to per se with Max, the heavier the sensations got. Was this guilt? I knew it wasn't. I'd witnessed guilt enough on other people, especially David. As the firstborn son of Catholic parents, he was often guilted into doing things against his will. This makes no sense, I said to him, once watching him pack for a trip home. You say you hate going to your uncle's for Christmas. You tell me he's an asshole, and every year he picks a fight with your mom. Everyone always everyone always ends up crying. So why are you going? I just don't get it. Too funny. He stopped packing and glanced at me affectionately. I know you don't get it, he said, and you're lucky. Now, lying in bed, just semi-wishing I was on that plane flying across the country, I understood what he meant. He hadn't decided to stay home because going would have made me feel guilty. I'd rejected Max's invitation because I chose my relationship with David. But in doing so, I just felt hobbled. I felt weak. It made me think of the second Superman movie, which he has to surrender his powers to be with Lois Lane. I wondered if something similar was happening to me. Is this what I have to do to be with David? I thought I ignore my sociopathic superpowers and live like a normal person, always making sensible choices. Well, fuck that, I thought. I'd filed this one under better in theory. Frustrated, I got out of the bed and headed to the bathroom. I didn't like the way I felt, not one bit, and I hopped in the shower and would just wash it off. I turned the knob all the way to the hot. As it was scalding ribbons of water hit my scalp, I willed myself to stabilize, but this discomfort continued to rise. I felt so conflicted. On one hand, I knew that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with David. I'd always sensed a sort of, just preternatural connection with him, like we were just destined to be together. On good days, we fit together perfectly. He's excellent in so many things that I am not, and I excelled in so many things that he did not. Things were just both good. She goes, things we were both good at, we were good at together. And things we were both bad at, we were bad at it together. On good days, we were just connected, which is what made the bad days so bad. Bad days were when I wouldn't tell him the truth, when we were so disconnected that nothing seemed to work. Every conversation was an argument, every word misinterpreted. On bad days, I felt lost, adrift. Those were the days I questioned the point on trying to evolve at all. I took a deep breath and turned off the water and just grabbed the towel. But today is going to be a good day, I said to myself. Still, I couldn't totally shake that claustrophobic sensation. It was nothing pronounced, just merely a shift in my perception. And yet, I wonder if she's feeling that stuck stress that she always talks about, right? She goes, and yet, however slight, it was just jarring, like the movement of a broken electrical toy that was just long presumed dead. Stuck stress. Yeah, there she goes. Dr. Carlin was right. My feelings for David, hey, that guy you meet and says, I just got out of prison today. Yeah, there you go. That's right, Elizabeth. That's exactly right. Oh, my. Dr. Carlin was right. My feelings for David could never be a permanent solution. I've been using him without even realizing it. I've been just coasting off my love for him for as long as I could avoid having to deal with my problems. But now that the cracks in our relationship were becoming impossible to ignore, the cycle of apathy and pressure had returned. Only now, I had no way to handle it. I was out of practice. I didn't know what to do. And the pressure, that compulsive urge to act out, was once again starting to rise. Here she goes. So we're going to read chapter 22, and then I'm going to stop for today. And we'll finish the other two chapters. Let's see, how many pages is this one? Yeah. We'll read the other two chapters tomorrow. We'll finish this book up. She is funny. I'm telling you, she's funny. Okay, so now chapter 22 is called Company. I can't wait to read it now. The bathroom floor seemed like the safest place to be sitting. I felt less like a doctoral student with years of psychological research under the belt, and more like a person I'd been with when I first got to LA. It was as if, psychologically speaking, I'd been transported back in time. But I haven't gone back in time. I reminded myself. I took a deep breath and tried to focus. This is simply an old response to a familiar pattern. I thought I just need to change it. My legs ached as I rose from the cold tile. I pushed open the door and instinctively shielded my eyes from the sun, just which fell across the bedroom floor in giant bright beams. Pulling a robe across my shoulders, I walked to my bookcase and pulled the text off the shelf. Overcoming destructive beliefs, feelings, and behaviors. The new directions for rational emotive behavior therapy. Okay. We covered it in my first clinical psych class. Rational emotive behavioral therapy, or REBT, just developed by Columbia University psychologist Albert Ellis. It's a treatment designed to help people recognize irrational and destructive beliefs and feelings, irrational destructive beliefs and feelings and behaviors and reconstruct them. The key component of REBT is the ABC model. When examining behavioral choices, the model asks an individual to identify three things. The activating event is A, the belief system related to that event is B, and the consequences is the results that belief are for C. Okay, ABC. I decided to apply the ABC model to myself. Obviously, the stuck stress I'd experienced earlier that morning was the activating event. The conviction that I needed to act out to combat the anxiety, my decades-old belief system just related to that event, and the consequences of the belief system would be the destructive behavior. I would then commit, and she's going to do it. She just can't help herself. She just has to do it. That's how she says she released this pressure that she feels. I may have been a novice at therapeutic intervention, but this model seemed like a workable solution for identifying and thus preventing my malevolent urges. It all boiled down to mindfulness. The destructive method I'd always used as a prescription, as she called it, for my apathy was remarkably effective and a powerful testament to the subconscious mind. The urge to act out, which I now understood was a counterbalance to apathy, had started when I was a kid. That was decades before I learned what I was going to be. That was decades before I learned what I was going to be behind the psychological scenes. It was something I did out of instinct, not in any conscious awareness. So it stood to reason. If I could just drag these psychological processes out of the darkness and into my conscious mind, if I could make myself become mindful of the interaction between my anxious reaction to apathy and my belief that I had to do something destructive to make it go away, well, it could just change my belief system. Could I alter that behavior? I snapped the book shut in a sudden burst of determination, bringing everything into sharp focus. Fuck it. I'm sorry, she says bad words, sorry. I said out loud, if I can't find a professional to treat me, I'll just become one to treat myself. A month later, I started a new semester at school. In addition to a fresh chapter in my academic career, it was also the start of another calendar year. Inside the classroom, a windowless lecture hall that provided idyllic insulation against the drizzly Los Angeles winter. I tapped a pencil against my desk. As a third-year doctoral student, it was time for me to select a topic for my dissertation. Though I'd long assumed that sociopathy would be my general subject, I hadn't decided which aspect of the disorder I wanted to research. Not that is until I realized what should have been obvious all along. On my desk was an application for doctorate candidacy. The word dissertation title was printed next to a long vacant line. I lifted up my pencil and I wrote, Sociopathy is the relationship to anxiety in response to treatment intervention. I sat back in my chair and just exhaled. Now that's a big undertaking that she's got there. When I went to the library a few days later, I brought all of my old research with me. I revisited many of the papers that I discovered during my years of independent study and came across some new ones. What I found gave me hope. Dr. Ben Cartman, one of the first physicians to receive credit for distinguishing between primary psychopathy, i.e. true psychopathy, and secondary psychopathy, i.e. true sociopathy, argued that antisocial behavior demonstrated by sociopaths is often a result of stress. Cartman theorized, though, they may share the same symptoms as primary psychopaths. Secondary psychopaths are not hardwired to pursue antisocial lifestyles and may be responsive to treatment. He was optimistic about his findings and just related to the secondary category because he believed they compromised the greater number of people commonly included in the group of psychopaths. Woo boy. I found another study by Dr. Lycan, who shared Cartman's stance on sociopathy. Like Cartman, Lycan's findings indicated that addressing anxiety could reduce the destructive traits of secondary sociopaths. He stressed the importance of socialization, the process through which a person's core values and belief systems are programmed to align with the rest of society in early childhood development. Okay. My favorite researcher, Linda Mealy, just furthered this theory by hypothesizing that sociopathy was a product of biological and environmental pressures, which led those affected to deliberately pursue manipulative and predatory social interactions. As I had explained to Dr. Carlin, Mealy describes sociopaths as psychologically disadvantaged people who use cheating. She's making me laugh. Who use cheating tactics to make the best of their bad situations. Hers was the theory that most closely aligned with my experiences. Based on this research, I decided to focus my dissertation on a treatment plan designed to address anxiety. With the stuck stress at the forefront of my consciousness, I resisted the urge to return to my old prescriptions. Instead, I doubled down at school. I rearranged my schedule to accommodate a full roster of classes. I signed up for every course I could manage, from sociology to from sociology to psychopharmacology. Then I buried my nose in research whenever possible. It wasn't easy. There were only so many hours in a day, and I still had other responsibilities to manage. I think she still worked for her father. In addition to school, I was also, here it is, I did not read ahead of time, I was just guessing. In addition to school, I was also still working as a music manager. Juggling these conflicting pursuits was extremely difficult. Each required tremendous amounts of energy, yet demanded very distinct skill sets. I knew that eventually I would arrive at a tipping point. I couldn't continue to do both, particularly when my academic and professional careers were pulling me in such different directions. Working as a manager let me use my sociopathic traits with aplomb, even though it hadn't been my goal. And ironically, because of my personality type, I managed to excel at it, successfully carving a niche for myself in the music industry. Being a good talent manager required moral flexibility, which I had in spades. The entertainment world offered a relatively safe environment for me to flex my sociopathic muscles, and I was reluctant to abandon it. But the side I was determined to nurture and grow, my good side, was strengthened by the things like graduate school and my relationship with David, which I was determined to save. The more time I spent at school, the more I understood that so many of the fights that we had were related to the aspects of my personality type that I didn't know how to change. I wanted to show him my research. If we could discuss things in scientific terms instead of emotional ones, maybe he'd see that our issues had nothing to do with him. Maybe I could get him to stop wanting me to change. But with both of us working around the clock, we rarely had time for dinners together, much less deep discussions about sociopathy. And then, of course, there was Max. Despite my heavy workload, my self-directed intensive research, and my full-time job, and the fact that I just shared a home with my boyfriend, however, fraught our relationship, my friendship with Max, let me turn the page over here. My friendship with that musician had only grown. The strength of our platonic connection wasn't something I'd anticipated, and I didn't always enjoy it. Indeed, I was often frustrated by the ease of which I could just, she goes, I was often frustrated by the ease with which I could be sucked into Max's orbit. When it came to the distraction techniques, he was incorrigible and masterful, frequently showing up at my office after hours of unannounced. Okay, let me reread that, okay? When it comes to distraction techniques, he was incorrigible and masterful, frequently showing up in my office after hours and unannounced when he knew I was trying to study. Stop it, I said, just shoving his hand away from my screen. Seriously, I need 15 more minutes. I stayed late at the office to study for an exam, something I did often in those days. Studying at home never worked. There was always something to clean or cook. or play or organize. My office was like a sensory deprivation chamber. At least it was before Max started dropping by. But I'm leaving tomorrow, he whined. You won't see me for months. Max and his band were going on tour through several cities across North and South America and parts of Europe to promote his latest album. My phone rang and caller ID showed his manager's number. What the hell, I asked. Why is Brian calling me? It wasn't unusual for me to hear from Max's management team when they couldn't find him. He shrugged. I gave him a look of just resigned annoyance as I reluctantly answered, Hello? Hey, Patrick, I need to go over travel details for our tour and haven't been able to reach my exclusive client. If you see him, could you have him call me? I'd love to, and I hung up and glared at Max. Respond to your manager so he can finalize the travel stuff. I just ordered. Why the fuck is he bugging me anyway? I'm not responsible for you. Max snorted and stood up and just leaned against the edge of my desk. He started rearranging my collection of decorative pens. Uh-oh. Now, you don't get her stuff out of order. Sociopaths don't like that. I knew I found that infuriating. Maybe he's afraid I'm going to find a new manager. He just whispered provocatively. Not interested, I replied sharply. It wasn't the first time he had mentioned it, and my terse response, like so many things regarding Max, didn't convey the whole story. The truth was that I had no desire to be his manager, as it was my relationship with Max gave me the one thing I'd always wanted, a social impunity. His rejections and boundaries and my ethical elasticity combined to create the perfect storm of inspired chaos that was both exhilarating and combustible. But I knew I could only push the limits so far. My love for David meant time with Max was always going to be finite. I like it that way. I felt safe, contained. I slapped his hand to stop him from playing with my pens. He responded by stretching his arms. Come with me, he crooned playfully, and you'll be in a world of pure imagination. Jesus, I muttered in mock horror. Max crossed his arms. Come on, he said impatiently. You can study tomorrow. Well, no, she can't. But anyway, I slapped my laptop shut. Fine. I said, collecting my books and pretending to be exasperated. You win. I excelled. What is it you like to do? His expression switched to a glee. Anything, he said. Everything. Let's go on an adventure. The sky's the limit. Stretch your sociopathic mind. Well, I began slowly. We could go somewhere really expensive for dinner, and you could pay for it. That's it. There you go. Or, Max carried on, ignoring my suggestion, we could grab something quick downtown and then go explore the Cecil. Now, the Cecil Hotel is this notorious hotel down in LA, Hollywood area, and it's very famous for being haunted. Now, I've heard about that more than once. The Cecil was notoriously macabre LA landmark that an infamous hotel just primarily for its association with suicides and violent crimes. There's your idea of stretching the sociopathic mind. I just replied unimpressed. Maybe we should swing by the Galleria on the way there. You can buy some combat boots and a Jack Daniels t-shirt. Well, sorry, he goes, well, what's your idea? I said, I don't have any ideas, I laughed. My plan was to study all night, remember? My phone rang and I just shot Max another aggressive glance. Did you respond to Brian? I asked. Seriously, if he's going to call me all night, I'm going to tell him he has to split your commission. Fine by me, Max grumbled. I saw unknown caller and let out a sigh. It had to be Jenny again. Uh-oh, this is the lady that's been blackmailing her. Hang on just a second. I gotta go get a tissue. My nose is gonna start running. One momento. Hang on, guys. Hang on. Allergy hell over here. Good. An allergy hell over here. I never had allergies until I moved into the Austin area, and that's when they started. Isn't that sad? All right. So the unknown caller, and she lets out a sigh. It had to be Jenny again. What's up, Max asked. Just reacting to my shifted mood. I shook my head and resigned disgust. Oliver Crucy's mom, it's her. He asked. He's curiously piqued. Yeah, she backed off for a while, but just started up again. Whatever. I ran my hand through my hair. I should just probably go to the police at this point. How about it? I asked, forcing a thin smile. Feel like a trip to the LAPD? His eyes widened as he just tried to decide if I was sincere. I'm dead serious, I replied. He grinned, a devilish look just spreading across his face. He said, actually, he said, I have a better idea. Oh no. I hope he doesn't get her in trouble. I hope he does not get in trouble. Hang on. Silly nose. I pulled my car into the visitor spot at Chincy's at her housing complex. Max, oh no. Max sat in the passenger seat, just giddy with excitement. Okay, I said, getting serious. This is your last chance. Are you sure you want to do this? He's going to get her in trouble. I know he is right here. All right. He rolled his eyes while opening his door. Without waiting for me, he took off across the parking lot. I got out and stood next to my car, just arms folded on the roof. He stopped to glance back at me. You coming? He asked. I just smiled smugly. Well, that depends, I said. Is your plan to go to Jenny's or did you have another stop you want to make? Well, I pointed to the other side of the lot because she lives that way. Max bit his lip to suppress a grin as he scurried back. When we reached her yard, I ran my hand along the exterior wall as my feet just crunched on the gravel. It had been a while since my last visit. I wasn't sure how to react to being there, but now that we had arrived, I was relieved to find that I was pleasantly elated. Allowing Max to participate introduced a playful energy into this typically toxic errand. When we got to the back of the property, I realized how much easier it would be just to hop the fence with an accomplice. I quietly explained the yard's layout to Max. So, I'll lift you over, he whispered. Oh no, she better not. Oh no. I turned toward the fence and just motioned off a short count of 3. Max made a cradle with his hands, and I stepped into it with one foot. He lifted me, but before I started to jump, this resulted in a half lift that threw us both off balance. I managed to get one ankle over the slats, and the other half of my body was just hanging limp against the back side of the fence, as Mac did his best to support my weight. How the fuck he managed? He just whispered through silent hysterics. Have you ever broken anything? And he goes, have you ever broken into anything? You have the coordination of a damn baby giraffe. Oh my God, that's funny. I took several slow breaths, forcing myself to stop laughing. Shut the fuck up and push. Max did as he was told, just shoving me up and over the fence. I landed with quite a thud next to the tree and just directed my attention to the patio. I looked at the sliding doors and noticed with relief the blinds were open. So were the ones in Jenny's bedroom. As usual, all the lights were on. After checking to make sure the coast was clear, I signaled for, oh my God. She goes, I signaled for Max. Oh my God. This is so bad. It's just so bad. After checking to make sure that the coast was clear, I signaled for Max. He cleared the fence and in one swift movement, smirking with pride. In case you were wondering, he just quipped, that's how it's done. Practicing your Grammy speech, I smiled sarcastically. In case you were ever wondering, I wouldn't stand where everyone can see me. Max just lowered his head and hurried to join me under the tree, the canopy of the branches just concealing us. He stood close behind me as our eyes fixed on the back of the house. So now what, he whispered. This is too bad. It's terrible. Just terrible. Now we're waiting. And we stood there in the darkness and it just occasionally, a breeze just rustling the leaves. After a few minutes of the window watching, I caught sight of Jenny walking into the living room. I heard Max take a sharp inhale when she stepped into the light, her frame in full view from our position in the backyard. Is that her? Max asked. She looks so, and his voice just trailed off. Pathetic, I offered. Yeah, it was true. Though it hadn't ever It's true, though it hadn't ever registered with me. Jenny did seem some sad just wandering around her little condo. She didn't look like an enemy deserving of. She goes, hang on. She didn't look like an enemy just deserving of bridal or anything really. We watched as she just puttered around and then moved into the bedroom. We could see her just rummaging through drawers. She's looking for cigarettes, I whispered. Sure enough, a few seconds later, she walked back in the living room and toward the sliding doors with a pack of menthols and a lighter in her hand. She stepped out onto the patio, no longer separated by physical barriers, I experienced a tidal wave of anticipation, which provided an unexpected kick of additional psychological relief. I exhaled and just in content. This was, she goes, this is what I want. I thought, a treatment plan that makes me feel like this. Uh-oh, this is so bad. I looked at Max. He was decidedly not content. His eyes were looking at Jenny, and his jawline was sharp. Every muscle in his body was tense, but still, Jenny sucked Jenny sucked distractedly on her cigarette. I watched as the smoke made lazy circles in the air and was reminded of the blue caterpillar from Alice in Wonderland. I leaned forward to tell this to Max, but he held, but his, hang on, but he held up his hand to shush me. He continued to stare. Jenny stretched out her arms over her head. We took a few steps toward the planter that she used as an ashtray. Savoring another long drag on her cigarette, she turned her head lazily in the direction of the tree. I'm wondering if she can hear them. That's what I want to know. I just held my breath. This was usually my favorite part. She would look right at me, but have no idea I was there. I braced myself for that rush feeling that typically followed the sensation of invisibility. Only I didn't get it. When she shifted her gaze, Max definitely leaned to the side, completely blocking me from her line of sight. For a moment, I was immobilized. The intensity of being in Max's shadow made me feel both defended and defenseless. He was protecting me. His instinct to safeguard me against what perceived as the threat of exposure was incredibly self-sacrificing. It should have made me feel safe, or, at the very least, grateful. Instead, I grew uneasy. A creeping discomfort just swept over me as I tried to identify what was happening. It reminded me of when he had invited me to New York, and I was edgy and disoriented and didn't know why. What the fuck, I thought. Desperate to stabilize, I took some deep breaths. After several excruciating seconds, Jeannie finished her butt and tossed it away into the planter. She returned to the house, and then we heard the sliding glass door make a definite click. I turned to Max and sighed, "We're leaving." It was late, and we were in my office parking lot, where he had left his car. Except once I'd parked, he'd shown no inclination to leave. "That was just unbelievable," he said. "I never felt anything like that. Not even on stage. Oh, my Lord. This is bad. Boy. It was like every part of me was just pulsing. He looked at me and asked, "Is this how you feel? Is this what you go there for?" I sighed, sort of. "Well, I get it," he looked at me, just expectantly. "So what happens now?" I guess he wants to know what they're going to do next that's bad. "What happens now is I go to the police," I said. "I mean, it's time. I should have done it months ago, instead of using her as a sociopathic pressure valve." Oh, boy. "What does that mean?" he asked. I took a deep breath and for the first time explained to him the specifics of lifelong struggles. He listened attentively as I told him about my battles with the pressure and how I learned young that destructive measures yielded the swiftest relief. I recounted my visits to Jenny's backyard, but this time I elaborated on the bliss that it brought me, and that going to the police meant surrendering that supply. "That's what I mean when I say it's time," I said. "I know turning her in is the right thing to do, but that's the problem. I always knew it was. I just don't feel it." I smiled weakly and shifted my gaze to Max. I was certain that he'd agree. He had always been this way. My mother, my father, my therapist, my boyfriend, everyone in whom I had ever confided about my dark side had always said the same thing, the right thing. But it wasn't like that for everyone else. "Fuck the police," he said, shaking his head. "What are they going to do?" I stared at him, just flabbergasted. "I mean it," he went on. "They're not going to do shit. She'll probably get off with a warning, if that." He turned to look directly at me. "You know what? Yeah, that's right." But I stammered, trying to get my bearings. "Haven't you been listening? This isn't about her. It's about me. It's not safe for me to have this random, person out there as a convenient bullseye. It's like an alcoholic keeping a bottle of liquor in the house, just in case. I want to understand my urges instead of reacting to them." I just continued, "And these past few months, I've been working on that. I stopped for a minute and just toyed with some elastic hairband just wrapped around my gear shift. But now I don't know. I said, she goes, I need to fucking deal with the situation. That's for sure. I need to deal with her. Max thought for a moment, staring through the windshield. I agree, he said finally. I think you should deal with her, but on your terms. Then he added, and I'll help. Oh boy, this guy's gonna get her in trouble. You know, he's bad. He's a bad influence on her. I groaned angrily at myself. It was stupid to take you there, I said. Why? He urged. He goes, because now I've seen her, now I get it. Get what exactly? I snapped. What is it like? He goes, what it's like to feel. Hang on a minute. Let me take my glasses here. He goes, what it's like to feel like you, to have to stalk and hunt people. I almost attacked her last time, or did you forget? I shook my head and said, that asshole got lucky. Oh boy, stalking. She does stalk people, which is very dangerous, you know. So they all deserve it, I explained, just frustrated. Don't you see, I'm not an idiot. I choose people like her specifically because they deserve it, because they do things I can use to justify my behavior. But it's not good, I told him. Not feeling guilty, my missing emotions. None of that shit is fucking good. You're wrong, Max insisted. Those things that you're talking about are just strengths, Patrick. You shouldn't be trying to dull your personality type. You should be trying to sharpen it. It was exactly the opposite of what David would have said. Correct me if I'm wrong, he continued, but she started this, and she's the one that keeps it going, not you. He paused. Fuck, even I want to kill this bitch. I dropped my head back against the seat and gazed at the ceiling. I don't want to kill her, I said. I know, he replied, but even if you did, it wouldn't make it bad. He paused. I envy you. Do you know how much I'd give to not care what other people think? To be able to just live even one day without the constant need for approval? I think most people would just love to be like that. That's because you can only see one side of it, I said. You don't know the whole story. And you do, Max asked? You spent your whole life trying to suppress who you are. It's like saying you know what it's like to drive a Ferrari when you've never even taken it out of the garage. He looked into my eyes. I'm telling you, Patrick, you need to embrace that shit because it's fucking amazing. I would love it if I were like you, he said. I do love it. I broke his gaze and looked out the empty street, unsure of how to respond. Max cocked his head. Just so we're clear, I'm not saying I'm in... This is kind of funny. I'm not saying I'm in love with you. Oh yeah, I chuckled, because if I did kill her, you definitely would be considered an accessory. You'd be tied to me for life, whether you love me or not. And he smiled. I can think of worse things, but like you said, you don't want to kill her. That's why I'm saying there are things you can do besides go to the police. He caught himself and corrected, things we can do. Boy, I stared down my nose at him. We? Hell yeah, he said. I'm invested now. And he paused. You've been recording her calls, right? I could see the gears just turning. We could start calling her late at night and play them back to her. We could just blackmail her ass right back. And that's just the appetizer. I grinned in spite of myself and told him, you need to go home. Admit it, he said, smiling. It's fun to have a co-conspirator. I looked at him just for a second, and I was floating across the surface of the great blue hole, just my fingers skimming across the water, just baiting the monsters to come and play. I smiled faintly. Go, I said again, this time more forcefully. He nodded and took a sharp inhale through his nose. You better text me while I'm gone, he said, and then without another word, he left. Okay, so that's the end of chapter 22. Gosh, he is so terrible. Thank God they didn't get caught. Yeah, we'll finish this book tomorrow, but then, it's interesting, isn't it? She's just a good writer. She's funny, but she's honest, and that's what's kind of amazing about her. So, what is all this? I'm telling you, I'm just trying to read a book, over here, and I'm getting 6 damn messages all over the place. Anyway, so I hope y'all enjoyed that. Just listen. I mean, if you can't listen to it all at once, that's okay. Just come back when you can. I hope you do. I hope you do enjoy it. Now, tomorrow, we're going to finish these 2 chapters. And then I'm going to get back on my, what's his name? my brief that I'm reading on Aubrey Trail's brief. Lots of good information on there. I'm also going to do FOIA requests to get information on Brittany Gosney. And have you watched? If you've watched Lady Freedom at all, you know who I'm talking about. But she is a study that we need to do. She's had a lot of bad things that happened to her, and then she ends up, actually hitting her own child with a car. Just a whole bunch of things happening there. But what's interesting about her is when she was 12 years old, she had a child, but they told her she was too young for this to take care of a child. So she had a lot of trauma in her childhood. So I want to do a study about her and figure out what makes her tick, because clearly when she's talking to the police about what happened, because I was watching the interview, it was like she did not have the reaction that you think you'd have when you've hit your own child with a car and they die. She just did not have. It's like she didn't have those feelings. I'm going, what's wrong with this person? She's not normal. So anyway, we're going to look at her too. Just a lot of things. And I'm going to be on the road tomorrow morning. I'm going to go to my son's house, and we're going to do a live show on Saturday from my son's house. That'll be fun. Anyway, y'all have a good afternoon. I'll see you tomorrow. I always say, be careful, take care, hug your babies. I'm telling you, hug your babies. Bye.